We have a panel of experts to break down this Newsom tax situation. So starting from my left, we have Steve Maviglio, a Democratic strategist, Chris McKaylee, a longtime lobbyist and adjunct McGeorge School of Law professor, and Tim Rosales, a Republican strategist. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you. No
problem.
So Chris, I want to start with you. I mean, is there anything in state law that really requires the governor to do what he did in releasing his tax returns this week?
The law only applies to candidates for governor. And so the first time it was in effect was in 2022. So when the governor ran for re-election, he and his competitors had to release that. You may recall, as a result of President Trump refusing to release his returns, California enacted a law that said candidates for governor and president have to release 5 years of returns. Unfortunately, the court said the state can't impose that on presidential candidates, but it remains in effect for gubernatorial candidates.
Okay, so with the governor not being a candidate for governor this year, I mean, Steve, why release them now?
One word, politics. I mean, it's very clear he's preparing to run for president. He wants to get this out of the way, reduce the damage control. All his competitors have already released their returns. Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Josh Shapiro, all these people have had their numbers out there. So I think he just wants to get this out of the way and move on, especially since wealth is a big issue among Democrats these days.
Yeah, Tim, I mean, from the Republican perspective, how do you see that base unpacking this information?
Well, I think they're going to look at it just like they do everybody else, all the candidates that Steve mentioned. But from a Republican kind of competition standpoint, I think the fact is they've got lots more to shoot at in terms of Governor Newsom and policies and things that he's actually done, and the other Democratic candidates do as well. That getting his income taxes out there, just like was said, get it done early, get it out of the way, and it looks like there's a few things to take a look at, but not much in terms of what the Republicans are going to really focus on.
Tim, you've worked with wealthy candidates. The Newsoms are they're still multimillionaires according to these tax returns. But do these personal tax returns paint the full picture of their wealth?
Absolutely not. I've worked with candidates who are very, very wealthy, and they release their tax returns, and I've had reporters sit there and say, well, where's all the money? What do they pay taxes on? Well, no surprise to the general public out there, wealthy people have their money all over the place, and it's not necessarily reflected all the time in income taxes, and there's other ways in which to get that information out there or to ask about it, but the full picture is not always painted by what's on your tax returns.
Chris, do personal tax returns show like the full picture of how these two benefit?
No, because remember, just by its name, an income tax return shows income. Many wealthy individuals, their wealth is in assets, their holdings, whether it's stock, real estate, property, etc. So this is just the income that they're receiving. But keep in mind that the governor, just like all local and state elected and appointed officials, every year have to file what we call a Form 700, a statement of economic interest that describes in greater detail those assets, not just their income. So there is information available on the assets of the governor and other office holders.
Yeah, behested payments, Steve, I know, is a question that has come up with the Newsoms because the governor has lobbied organizations to provide money to nonprofit organizations ran by the first partner. Is that an issue for the governor? Is that part of all of this?
Yeah, this has been the explosive issue. A behest is a gift by a corporation typically to a charity on behalf of a candidate. Sort of a wink and a nod. If you give these people some money, that'll be very nice. So, this has been ethically a problem in the legislature, and I think it extends to the governor, and I think people will make hay of it.
So with that jumping off, the nonprofit organizations that are allegedly at the center of one of the federal investigations targeting the Newsoms, they're looking into the nonprofit specifically ran by Siebel Newsom. But these tax returns, they don't show that, they're enriching themselves through Girls Club Entertainment or the Representation Project, those two nonprofits. Steve, how do you see that playing into the public perception of this whole FBI situation involving the Newsoms?
Well, I think in particular, we haven't seen a first partner, first lady, get so involved in a lot of policy as we have with Jennifer Siebel Newsom, and I think she's becoming a little bit of a problem for him because she's created a lot of headlines about money and behests from corporations. This is something we haven't typically seen. Even Maria Shriver didn't have that kind of issue. So, I mean, it's new, and I think voters are trying to figure out what those connections are, and if there's any investigation that leads to anything that's murky, again, problematic.
Tim, Republican, perception on this FBI investigation and the financials with the nonprofits.
Well, certainly it's unusual to see nonprofits losing money year over year, and that's what we're seeing. That's what we've seen with the Newsom's interest in those nonprofits. And I think that's probably kind of sparking the interest of FBI and other and IRS and other officials looking at a nonprofit that is continuously losing money. What are they expending money on? Where is that money going? Are they raising new money? All of those questions, I think, probably need to be answered and will be answered in due time. But from a Republican standpoint, I think that again, kind of goes back to all of these issues that seem to follow the Newsoms wherever they go. I mean, from the time that the governor was mayor of San Francisco to where he is now, to now running for president, it's just a train of scandal issues backed up by a complete failure on the policy perspective, which I think Republicans are kind of chomping at the bit, hoping that the Democrats, nationally nominate Gavin Newsom, because I think they're going to have a field day when it comes to opposition research and then also looking at different policies that they can absolutely drive trucks through.
Chris, any thoughts on the FBI investigation along with the information that's come out with these tax returns from the legal perspective?
No, but I think that I think the governor's perspective that these are politically motivated, I think that there's some credence in that. Just in the past week, we've had the Trump administration admit in court, for example, that the removal of green energy funds were entirely politically motivated and targeting blue states. And earlier this week, the Trump administration admitted that over a year ago, last August, at the governor's rally, that those ICE raids were in fact politically motivated. It gives him some basis to obviously view these as politically motivated by the Trump administration.
But he has hired a criminal defense attorney. He confirmed last week, Abby Lowell, who is a Washington, D.C. based, very high profile attorney. I mean, does that mean the governor is taking this seriously, Chris?
Undoubtedly, and he should, of course. The federal government and the Department of Justice in a weaponized administration or a non-weaponized administration has a lot of tools at their disposal, and any criminal investigation should, of course, be taken seriously. But clearly, he's going to have to combat what many view as a weaponized federal Department of Justice.
Yeah, Steve, thoughts on the hiring of Abby Lowell?
Yeah, I mean, he's the best at sort of damage control and law, so that's why you hire him. And I think it's important to note that Newsom hasn't been found guilty of anything. These are just investigations, and compared to the grift that we're seeing from Trump and all his problems, this is nothing.
Tim, final thoughts?
Well, I think time will tell what the future holds for Governor Newsom and his wife in terms of these investigations. That will play out, and I think Steve's exactly right. He hasn't been charged or accused or found guilty, or he's been accused but not found guilty of anything. I think that in terms of the national conversation, it continues to do what Governor Newsom wants, which is, at this point in the campaign, keep his name at the top of the list, out there, talked about, not just in California, but nationally. And certainly, I think releasing income taxes and those types of things furthers that goal of his to keep himself out there in the news in whatever light that may be he may be out there in.
All right, Tim, Chris, Steve, we so appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.